Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. Today I want to take a closer look at Intel and Qualcomm. Both these players unfortunately just got some, or earlier this week, they both got some kind of bearish news from the overall United States government dealing with a customer in China. So in today's episode, I want to break it down, kind of explain my overall thoughts on how I see this impacting both these companies. So let's take a closer look in today's episode.
I want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for the subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
All right, so first we're going to start off here with Intel, and Intel, unfortunately, has been having a very, very bad year. Year to date, the stock is down roughly 37%. I mean, 37% is crazy when most of the semiconductor space is booming thanks to the AI space or the AI race right now. But I want to say, with the market cap of $128 billion, Intel seems like one of those stocks that, hey, look, in 5 years, if they execute it correctly, if they execute correctly in their manufacturing business, which I believe most of its value is going to be worth in the future, if they continue to evolve in the CPU server space, in the CPU consumer space, and they have all this other kind of IP with their or investments or ownership in Mobile Eye, their FPGA business, then a market cap of 128 billion looks fairly cheap. Now that is if they execute correctly and everything they have right now. And obviously there's a lot of risk. But I mean, we'll see in 5 years. This is one of those stocks that I believe will continue to be dead money for at least the foreseeable future. Well, anyways, enough with that rant. What I really wanted to talk about is this filing that Intel reported earlier this week on May 8th. But on May 7th, they mentioned that the United States Department of Commerce did informed Intel Corporation that it was revoking certain licensing for exports of consumer-related items to a customer in China effective immediately. Now, we already know the customer in hand because Qualcomm kind of had the same SEC filing, and they probably got this. They got the same information from the Department of Commerce. But I want to say, and maybe you, the viewers, can tell me if I'm overthinking it. But I think Intel, when they give you something like this, I feel like they're hiding a lot, right? So first, they don't tell us the customer. They don't have to tell us the customer. But by telling us the customer, I think as an investor, it brings some more trust. The other thing that I did not like about this filing is they did mention that, look, as a result, the company expects revenue for the second quarter of 2024 to remain in the original range of 12.5 to $13.5 billion. So when you first read that, you're like, okay, look, this was not a big deal.
Before we go any further, we are now on the road to 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Thank you all for the crazy support. So if you haven't and are enjoying the content, make sure to hit the thumbs up and the subscribe button. Finally, if you want to support the channel a little bit more, make sure to check out my special offer at fool.com/Jose. Now back to today's episode.
But there's a but. And I feel like if there's a but, then you shouldn't have started with the original statement. It mentions but below the midpoint. So while it is true, I mean, it's like you're not telling a lie, but you're also not telling the full truth. And this, again, I don't know if I'm overthinking it. I do not own any shares of Intel. I also don't short anything, so I don't have a bet against them. But when I read stuff like this, I feel like if you were just a little bit more straightforward, it would bring a little bit more trust between management and investors. Because at the end of the day, while it is around that range of 12.5 billion to 13.5 billion, the new range should be between 12.5 billion to 13 billion. So I would say most companies that have maybe a good trust with their investors would say that, hey, look, with the new updated information, we're keeping our lower end of the range, but we are moving the upper range closer to this value instead. And again, while that might create more of a bearish sentiment to the stock, in my opinion, if I was an investor, it would bring more trust that management isn't just trying to hide things. So again, let me know in the comments below if I might be overthinking this, or does it seem like maybe there's better ways that Intel could handle their relationship with investors. So it definitely looks like it's going to impact their quarter two revenue, their quarter one revenue, quarter two revenue, my apologies. But they mentioned for the full year of 2024, the company continues to expect revenue and earnings per share to grow year over year compared to 2023. Again, they didn't really give us a guidance much for 2024, but we can already tell that this customer is already going to create some impact for 2024. And I believe this can kind of create some bearish sentiment for the stock in the next few weeks, as maybe analysts go on there and start to reanalyze the revenue projections for this year now with the loss of this customer. As we saw, the stock did take a nice dip after this SEC filing came out. So I do believe for Intel, this is something investors need to keep a closer eye out, especially if it is already impacting at least some of their revenue expectations for this quarter and most likely for the full year, even though they still expect to grow. They might just not grow as fast. Now, if we take a closer look at Qualcomm, we can see in the past 5 days also took a nice dive after kind of, it doesn't seem like it was related to the press release too much. It seems to be just more volatility. And we can see in the past 5 days, the stock is only down 0.86%. But Qualcomm also released an SEC filing that the United States Department of Commerce informed Qualcomm that it was revoking the company's license to export 4G and certain other integrated circuit products, including Wi-Fi products, to Huawei device, which is a Chinese company that is on that kind of restriction list in China. So Huawei, and I'm pretty sure I'm mispronouncing that company's name, my apologies, is like a big tech player company that produces laptops, phones, and all the other stuff. So they need the chips from these players. But one thing, it does seem like Qualcomm is a little bit more straightforward to its investors than maybe Intel. And this is why I say, right, it's the same story, but two companies tell it in different ways. And this is something that I did enjoy about Qualcomm. They mentioned that they previously disclosed that on May 1st of 2024 that they did not expect to receive product revenue from Huawei beyond the current calendar year. So Qualcomm had already told its investors that, hey, look, after 2024, we weren't going to expect any more revenue for this company. Now, unfortunately, it's coming a little bit earlier, but at least they had already warned their investors one way or another. They mentioned despite this kind of change, they're not changing their financial guidance for the third quarter or for the fiscal year of 2024, previously provided in their earnings release. Now, while I think, like I mentioned, for Qualcomm, I think the stock took a less of a reaction because of two things. One, it had already informed investors about this for the 2024, so there wasn't too much of a shock. And secondly, because they had done that, analyst projections had already anticipated that 2024 wasn't going to see much growth from this customer. Now, Intel, it does seem like maybe analysts might have not been completely expecting this. So for beyond 2024, maybe revenue numbers were not guiding for this change. Now, if we take a closer look at Qualcomm's PE ratio forward, is sitting at 18.29, for 1 year, 16.11. So Qualcomm and Intel, if we look, are kind of sitting at very similar valuations, but Qualcomm, in my opinion, definitely has some growth opportunities. Obviously, this is a company that deals in the mobile business, which is seeing pressure, especially in China, but they have the growth opportunity of the automotive market. And thanks to artificial intelligence, they also have the growth opportunity of Internet of Things, as this market can grow with things like smartphones, like PCs, not smartphones, smartwatches, smart home products, PC market, which they're getting into, virtual reality, and the list goes on and on. So right now, Qualcomm definitely looks like the better play, in my opinion, if you're looking to choose between the two. But both these players definitely got some interesting news this week. So let me know, what are your thoughts? Do you believe Intel should be handling their investors' relations a little bit better? Like I mentioned, I think they weren't lying, but they were just hiding a little bit more of the truth. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Take care, have a good day, and see you next time.